The neighborhood of Willow Creek, nestled in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon, was the kind of place where you'd expect kids to ride bikes until dusk and neighbors to swap recipes over picket fences. It was peaceful, predictable, almost idyllic until Vanessa took over as president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association in the summer of 2020. Her ascent marked the beginning of a reign that would turn our quiet community into a battleground, and me, an unassuming resident with a knack for staying under the radar, into her unlikely nemesis. At first, Vanessa's rule seemed harmless, if a bit overzealous. Emails trickled in, nitpicking about grass trimmed a half-inch too short, recycling bins left out past dawn, or holiday wreaths lingering a day beyond the solstice. I figured she'd burn out, that her clipboard-wielding enthusiasm would fizzle. But Vanessa wasn't here to play nice. She was here to dominate. She didn't just enforce the HOA bylaws. She conjured new ones from thin air. A family down the street got slapped with a due loss $75 fine because their kid's sidewalk chalk art was labeled vandalism. Another neighbor was cited for a VY Sibley weathered garden gnome. When Vanessa's hawk-like gaze landed on me, I laughed off her first violation notice. My porch light was excessively warm-toned, clashing with the neighborhood's cohesive ambience. I let it slide, assuming her absurdity would expose itself. But Vanessa didn't want compliance, she wanted control. Her next move was personal. She targeted my lavender bushes, which I'd nurtured for years, claiming they were overly fragrant and a public nuisance. Then came a warning about my car's tires encroaching onto the sidewalk by a centimeter. Each citation came with a fine, each fine a jab, and each jab a sign she'd singled me out. Why? Maybe it was because I'd once, ever so politely, pointed out a flaw in her proposed parking ordinance at an HOA meeting. Or maybe she just smelled defiance. Neighbors whispered similar stories. The more you ignored Vanessa's petty edicts, the more she tightened the screws. Some, exhausted by her relentless badgering, started packing up and MOVYing out. Vanessa called it community cleansing. Her power trip escalated when she began emailing my workplace. Somehow, she'd sniffed out where I work at a corporate office in downtown Portland and started firing off complaints. She accused me of flouting community standards, implying I was unfit for my role, her words dripping with sanctimonious venom. She signed each email with a litany of self-aggrandizing titles: President of Willow Creek HOA, Chair of the Neighborhood Harmony Committee, Guardian of CIVYC Pride. It was audacious, almost comical, but it crossed a line. What Vanessa didn't know was that I wasn't just some desk jockey. I was the chief operating officer of the company she was harassing, with direct oversight of the DVY sound that employed her own super VY. She was swinging at a giant, oblivious to the shadow looming over her. I decided to bide my time, letting Vanessa dig her own grave. Patience, I knew, was a weapon sharper than any outburst. She kept escalating, her emails to my company growing bolder, her HOA newsletters sharper, her fines steeper. At meetings, she strutted like a dictator, lecturing us like naughty school kids while her cronies on the board nodded in sync. One evening, I caught her snapping photos of my driveway from across the street, my car's bumper barely kissing the curb. A week later, a DULA 100 fine arrived for obstructing pedestrian pathways. It was clear, this was war. By late 2021, Vanessa's vendetta had pushed neighbors to their breaking points. She threatened to revoke pool access for repeat offenders and bragged about upholding standards beyond our gates. Then she made her boldest move yet, a formal letter to my HR department, typed on HOA letterhead, accusing me of ethical lapses and disgracing the community. She attached blurry photos of my lavender and that infamous bumper as EVY Denke. My HR team was stunned, flagging it as harassment. At work, I kept my cool, but inside, I was grinning. Vanessa was climbing a ladder with no top, and I was ready to watch her fall. What she didn't realize was that her super VY, a contractor named Derek, reported to someone who reported to me. Her complaints were landing on the desk of the very person she was trying to undermine. I could have ended it with a phone call, but I wanted her to unravel publicly. I started collecting EVY Densivry email, every fine, every snide newsletter. Neighbors, fed up, shared their own horror stories. An elderly widower, Mr. Thompson, told me Vanessa had fined him weekly for his mailbox's unauthorized shade of beige. A young couple confessed she'd called their porch swing aesthetic clutter. It wasn't just petty, it was cruel. By mid-2022, Vanessa's ambition came into focus. A deep dive into her social media revealed she wasn't just an HOA tyrant. She was gunning for a seat on Portland's Urban Planning Commission. Her LinkedIn boasted of transforming communities through decisive leadership. The HOA was her stage, and I was her scapegoat, problem resident she could fix to bolster her resume. She needed a VY lane to play the hero, and I was it. Her plan was calculating, almost brilliant, but she'd underestimated the neighborhood's resolve. The turning point came in early 2023 when Vanessa filed a formal ethics complaint against me with the HOA, naming me publicly and alleging gross misconduct. She sent it to the Northwest Regional HOA Council, the very group she hoped would catapult her to city politics, not knowing they had zero tolerance for baseless attacks. The council launched an inquiry, and suddenly, Vanessa was under a microscope. Meanwhile, at work, I met with Derek's boss, laying out the EVY denke, her harassment, her misuse of company ties, her reckless defamation. The reaction was swift outrage. Vanessa had invoked our company's name in her crusade, a breach of contract that put her job at risk. The stage was set for the annual HOA Assembly in June 2023, a gathering of hundreds at the Willow Creek Community Hall. I rallied neighbors in secret, meeting in a cramped coffee shop downtown. Over lukewarm lattes, we planned our counterattack. Mr. Thompson volunteered to speak first, clutching his stack of fines. A nurse named Lila offered to expose Vanessa's discriminatory remarks about her family's non-traditional yard art. We drafted a timeline of her abuses, complete with her own 2017 violation du law 500 fine for running an unpermitted Airbnb in her old neighborhood. The hypocrisy was delicious. The assembly was electric with tension. Vanessa swept in, all smiles and pastel blazers, clutching a binder like a scepter. She launched into a speech about elevating Willow Creek's prestige, oblique us to the storm brewing. When she opened the floor, Mr. Thompson stood, voice quaking but resolute. "How do you justify fining me for my mailbox while ignoring my complaints about your harassment?" he demanded, holding up his papers. The room buzzed. Vanessa stammered, but before she could recover, Lila rose. "Is it true you're using our fines to pad your city commission application?" The crowd gasped. Vanessa's face flushed crimson. One by one, neighbors stood, airing grievances, flashing violation notices, demanding answers. I watched as Vanessa's composure cracked, her gavel slamming so hard it skittered across the table. "This is a witch hunt," she shrieked, eyes wild. "You're all jealous of my leadership." The room fell silent. Her meltdown caught on dozens of phone cameras. When Lila moved for a no-confidence vote, the response was thunderous, hands shot up, and the board was dissolved in minutes. Vanessa stormed out, muttering about lawsuits, straight into the waiting notebook of a local reporter I'd tipped off. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next day, Vanessa's tirade was viral on our neighborhood's social media. At work, I escalated her case to legal. Her employer, facing a blacklist from our company, suspended her for failing to disclose her HOA ROLIA contract violation. Within a week, she was fired, her consulting career in tatters. The regional HOA council dismissed her complaint against me and audited her conduct, effectively killing her commission dreams. Best of all, that old Airbnb fine resurfaced, landing her a court summons for non-disclosure on her city application. The local paper ran it under a gleeful headline: "Former HOA leader faces ethics probe." Vanessa fled to a glitzy new development in Salem by late 2023, thinking she'd find a fresh start. But Salem's HOA was a machine run by ex-lawyers and military types who fined her for everything from unapproved window blinds to excessive mailbox decals. Her appeals were shot down, her board candidacy rejected after her Willow Creek scandal surfaced. She tried fighting back in court and lost, buried under fines and fees. Rumor has it she sold her house at a loss, slinking away to obscurity. Back in Willow Creek, we rebuilt. The new HOA, led by folks like Lila, slashed unfair fines, hosted block parties, and turned our newsletter into a celebration of community. My lavender bushes bloomed brighter than ever, no violation notices in sight. Vanessa's reign became a legend, a warning whispered over barbecue. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Her legacy? Not the control she craved, but the unity she forged against her. By trying to break us, she made us unbreakable. So what do you think? Was Vanessa a misguided crusader for order, or a power-hungry tyrant who got what she deserved? Should neighbors have fought back sooner, or was the slow burn of justice worth the wait? And here's the big one. Would you have stayed silent or led the charge against her? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if you're Team Justice, and subscribe for more stories where the underdog flips the script. Let's keep the conversation going. Where are you watching from?